Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome in to Game Over Toronto following a win in Anaheim to round out the California road trip. The Toronto Maple Leafs take home 5 of 6 points on this road trip, which, if you had told everyone going into it, I think everyone would have been okay with that outcome. It's just the way that those 5 points were collected. But at the end of the day, the Leafs win and they extend their lead atop the Atlantic. Granted, the Panthers and Lightning have a game in hand, but the Leafs are now 3 points up on them because the Montreal Canadiens did us a massive favor this morning, beating the Panthers in regulation. And now the Leafs have 2 days off before they take on said Panthers, and the Panthers have a back-to-back situation where they have to play Montreal again on Tuesday, a little home-and-home series, and then they travel to Toronto on Wednesday, which will be a massive game for the implications of the Atlantic Division race. But welcome in, everyone. My name is Zach Payne. I am your host for this evening on Game Over Toronto. And before we get into it, make sure to hit like and subscribe to the Game Over Toronto channel. And it's just to keep up with all of the post-game shows. We do one after every single Leafs game. And we are getting excited for the playoff shows that are on the horizon. Leafs can't clinch a playoff spot because Montreal won today, but the Leafs are getting close to clinching that spot. I think one more win or one more Montreal loss will do it. I'm not sure on that. I have to check on that. But welcome in. We're going to, as always, this first segment, we like to talk about the game just in a general recap sense, or at least I do. I always dedicate this first period segment to a game recap. So let's go ahead and get into it. So coming into this game, I was frustrated right before the game even started for one simple reason. Simon Benoit was still in the lineup, and I will talk about that a little bit more later. He was an adventure in this one, as he has been, but he was real bad in San Jose. He got benched for the majority of the second period. Last night in LA, he was directly responsible for the only Kings goal, getting beat off the rush in an inexcusable manner. Today, he wasn't directly responsible for any goals, but he had a number of turnovers in the defensive zone. He did have a couple nice plays to bail out Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who was also a bit of an adventure. That pair is just an adventure, but I was mad right off the bat. But anyways, we get into it. The first few minutes, Trevor Zegras had a chance in alone because Ekman-Larsson took an aggressive and stupid pinch, and Benoit was busy covering the back door. He beats Joseph Woll, but he's unable to get the puck on net. He hits the side of the net. If he had, I don't know, he could have beat him there, but I don't think Zegras fully realized that he was in alone, so Leafs dodge a bullet early. But unfortunately, they don't dodge a bullet a few minutes later because not that kind of bullet, but the Leafs get bit by a review, which you could argue they could have last night. They get bit by here. Auston Matthews, fantastic patience behind the net, just waiting and waiting for Matthew Knies to kind of free his stick at the side of the net. He hits Knies, who jams it short side on Lucas Dostal. Unfortunately, like 10 seconds prior, Mitch Marner knocked the puck out of the air with a high stick, which this is so. I know Dominic talked about this on the stream last night. Last night, Auston Matthews, the angle from the corner that was level with Matthews was pretty conclusive that it was not a high stick, and Matthews is also just a taller player, so that kind of helps him avoid the shoulder height limit. Mitch Marner is a little bit shorter, and he's also just swinging it wildly in the air. Like, regardless of what you think of the Matthews play last night, the Marner play tonight, they're probably both 50-50 plays. One goes against you, one goes for you. Cool, whatever. Stop swinging your stick so high in the air. Why are you trying to swing at the puck when it's that high in the air? Use your glove. What are you guys doing? Like, you're asking for these kind of reviews by swinging your sticks this freely. You're asking for penalties by swinging your sticks this wildly. Because if a Ducks player's in the area, you're going to get them in the head. So I don't like what those two have been doing with the puck in the air, but regardless, 0-0, this one gets called back. Now, we could talk about the officials. I don't want to talk about them too much. The Ducks get 2 power play opportunities in the first period to the Leafs 0, which worked out because the Ducks' 32nd ranked power play didn't do anything. I was hoping this would be a game for the power or the penalty kill to build some confidence against a bad unit. The Ducks get one later that we'll talk about. But moving on, end of the period, Max Domi. I've been on record a lot of times saying that I am not the biggest Max Domi fan. He decided out of nowhere that Radko Gudas' jockstrap was now his property because he, in transition, Kalyankrok hands the puck to Domi and he absolutely undresses Gudas and cuts to the middle of the ice and sends a backhand from pretty high slot. Like it was hardly close to the net. Like it was a good quality chance. But he just sends a backhander top shelf, an absolute snipe of a backhand shot from relatively far out considering the type of shot. It's just an absolutely gorgeous goal by Max Domi, who is really starting to find his groove the last 2 months. And honestly, I like the third line. I thought they were okay in LA last night, the newly formed Lawton, Domi, Yarncroke line. I like that line, and I like what that line can bring. You stick Max Domi with two defensively responsible wingers, and Yarncroke can rip it. Lawton can help on the forecheck and go to the net. I like what this line represents. Max Domi, he's always going to be a flawed player. However, if we look at the playoffs last year, he did elevate his game. His best play was in the playoffs. And not only that, Max Domi was the first line center for 4 out of 7 games last year when Austin Matthews went down with whatever injury, illness happened to him. And then in game 7, Matthews was the third line center. Domi was the guy who was taking all these draws. He was playing center and he played it fine. He played it well enough for the Leafs to force game 7 and play super low event defensive hockey. I kind of like the idea that Domi, with responsible wingers around him, could be an asset because what he brings in transition is something that the Leafs just don't really have. Him and Bobby McMahon, and I'll talk about McMahon in a second because he had a great chance, but these two guys can really bring something in transition, an element that is just lacking in this Leafs lineup. But Domi undresses Gudas at the end of the period, and he gets the Leafs on the board, and he also draws a penalty early in the second period. Now, I don't know what Trevor Zegras was thinking on this play. Domi's just cutting to the net, puck is in the corner, completely harmless play, and Zegras just absolutely chops him down. A dumb play. But on the power play, comes up empty, but at the end of the power play, Bobby McMahon makes a great play, great rush chance generated where he just beats a guy wide with speed, which is something you always love to see. Again, Oliver Ekman-Larsson almost buries it. Ends up coming up empty, but it is what it is. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, then a few minutes later, again, stupid pinch. I don't know what he was doing on this play, but Simone Benoit bails him out. Rare good play by Simone Benoit. And seconds later, Mitch Marner makes a great play at the blue line to disrupt a play. He earns himself a breakaway, and watching it live, I gotta be honest, I did not think that Marner put on that great of a move. I must have been wrong because Dostal completely went to the wrong side of the net and Marner is able to bury it. 2-0 Leafs. Beautiful play by Marner. Bit of an up and down game for Marner in terms of how noticeable he was, but great play there. They talked about this on the broadcast. He's been wicked on the road with his goal scoring. At home, not so much, but we're on the road, so hey, he scores. Woohoo. Then a few minutes later, because the Leafs are incapable of putting together a full 60 minutes against bad teams, Leo Carlsson, he fires one through screen. Tanev just couldn't fight off Cutter Gauthier in front. He just didn't do a great job battling traffic in front and clearing the eyes of Joseph Woll. Carlson's shot goes in. Ducks get on the board. And then a few minutes later, Oliver Ekman-Larsson tries to make up for it. For his transgressions earlier with missing on the power play and the bad pinches, but he hits iron, he hits the post on a point shot. Then another play in the neutral zone, Mitch Marner undresses a Ducks defender, and in on a 2-on-1, this was a weird, in the midst of a change, so it was actually Marner with Kampf on a 2-on-1, but Marner hits crossbar, unfortunately. It was a great play by Marner, would have been unreal. Then the top line draws a power play. Austin Matthews nearly gets decapitated. A skate blade flew near Matthews' face, and my heart sank for a minute, I'll be honest. But top line and the Ekman-Larsson pair draw a power play. On the power play, it was at the end of the period, and then to start the third, there was so the Ducks, Jackson Lacombe, who I want to talk about in a second, fantastic defenseman. He makes a great play to disrupt the Leafs break-in, cycle, like dump, ring it around the boards play. He hands it off to a teammate for a clear, who just completely fumbles it and gets got on the forecheck. William Nylander is left all alone. He tries to pass back because Dostal cut off the angle. Doesn't quite work. Then a few seconds later, Matthew Knies makes a great play to drive the net. And in the chaos, the puck squirts out to Austin Matthews, who just misses, unfortunately. Puck comes back the other way, and on a 2-on-1, Morgan Riley, who is fresh off the bench for a change, he dives down to stop the 2-on-1, ends up tripping the guy, so the Leafs go back to the penalty kill. On the power play, the Ducks are able to score. This was a weird kind of miscommunication between Chris Tanev and Jake McCabe, where McCabe was aggressively playing up on the boards. Tanev was covering the guy in front. Puck swings around. Tanev then pushes out. McCabe can't get back in time to tie up his man, and the Ducks get on the board again, and they tie the game. And I'm guessing at that point is where Jake McCanui in the chat, I'm guessing that is when that comment came in. What's new? The Leafs blow a 2-0 lead against the Ducks. Yeah, 2-goal lead, most dangerous lead in hockey. But the good news is they made up for it. Now, the third period was very low event, just very not much happening. Although I will say the Ducks seemed to have a little bit more juice in the third period. They weren't creating anything. The Leafs were doing a great job keeping them to the outside all night, but it wasn't like the Leafs were generating many chances. There was a really weird sequence by the Leafs bench in which Matthew Knies huge hit on Oliver Shillington, and Shillington was down and injured. So the Ducks just, they take exception to that. And Matthew Knies is trying to go off the ice after that hit. And a Ducks player basically slides in between Knies and the bench. And Knies, he's defending himself. But because the bench door was open, the Ducks player kind of fell into the Leafs bench a bit. And then Knies was the only call on that play. Now, I am of the mind the hit was clean. The refs determined that the hit was clean. The hit was clean. So the Ducks taking exception and instigating a shoving match, both guys got to go there. Knies is trying to leave the ice, and a Ducks player instigates a scrum, keeping him on the ice, and then he falls over the bench. You got to either take both or you got to take none. The fact that Matthew Knies was the only penalty on that play is blasphemy to me. I really did not like that call. And then in the moments after that, there were two, Oliver Ekman-Larsson was obviously hooked and forced to ice the puck because of it. No call. The refs just did not. The penalties finished 4-2 against the Leafs. The Ducks had 2 more power plays than the Leafs. Why are we suddenly against makeup calls? I have no idea what was happening there. Brutal officiating in the final 10 minutes, but it doesn't matter. Fourth line shift. Now, for a majority of the game, the fourth line was invisible. Last night, they were invisible all night. That's the Pontus Holmberg curse for you. But David Kampf on this play, he's just kind of sitting on the boards, waiting. He floats a shot on, and Steven Lorentz, deflection somehow, I don't know, the angle was hilarious, because I have no idea how that puck got past Dostal, but I'm not complaining. The Leafs take a 3-2 lead, a lead that they would not relinquish. Same thing as against the Kings last night. As soon as the Leafs got the lead late in the third period, that was the game. We could talk about Jake's comment where the Leafs blow a 2-0 lead against the Ducks. Cool. The Leafs are they're 31 or 32, 1-1 when leading after 2. They're fantastic playing with a lead, and against teams like the Kings, like the Ducks, who don't really have that kind of extra gear offensively when they're playing from behind, the Leafs are able to shut them down. And the Leafs also are able to shut down better teams than that. The only difference is the other teams will at least threaten a little bit more. I didn't think the Ducks were particularly threatening in the last few minutes. Lacombe did have a shot hit the post with about 4 or 5 minutes to go, I believe, which Joseph Woll just slid a little bit too aggressively. But overall, I thought Woll was fine. There was I didn't have a problem with either of the goals he allowed. It was just a backdoor play that he can't react to, and then through a screen on a long shot, you want Tanev to clear his eye. the guy in front a little bit better on that one. But alas, the Leafs hold on for a 3-2 win. Matthew Knies almost had a highlight reel goal with about a minute to go because the faceoff came out to the neutral zone. Top line comes out. Dostal had to go back to the net. Knies, great effort. Just completely whiffed on the shot attempt. Is what it is. Leafs hold on 3-2. And now they sit 3 points up on the Panthers and Lightning. Panthers and Lightning have a game in hand. But Panthers and Leafs on Wednesday, then Panthers and Leafs again next week, and then Leafs Lightning. You have 3 games against those 2 teams. That's for the division. If you can beat the Panthers both games, you probably win the division. If you beat the Panthers and the Lightning, you're gonna win the division. It would be hard to lose the division at that point. So, very good game for the Leafs. Not very good. A perfectly fine game for the Leafs in the sense that their opponent didn't generate really any quality chances. You know what? And let's look this up. Natural Stat Trick, which is my favorite analytics site, they do a good job of tracking 5-on-5 and all situations, all that. So 5-on-5, the Ducks controlled 54% of the shot attempts. Just shot attempts, regardless of location, 54-45. That's maybe not ideal considering the Ducks aren't a great team. But the Leafs controlled the high danger chances. So these are the quality scoring chances, 13-7 at 5-on-5. Expected goals was basically dead even. The Leafs were at 2.12, Ducks were at 2.04, so Leafs have a little bit of an edge there. If we change that to all situations, so this is including the power play, the Leafs they controlled the high danger chances 16-12, and the expected goals, once again, still a little bit in the Leafs' favor, 3.8 to 3.62. So I understand in recent games, it's been maybe frustrating, and this is Terry M's, where the source of Terry M's criticism, I believe, is the Leafs get outshot a lot. The Leafs are routinely outshot. The other team holds the puck a little bit more than the Leafs do on a nightly basis. The difference is the Leafs are allowing that. If we go back to previous playoff series, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, what have the Leafs always struggled with? They'll have the puck a lot, but how many quality chances are they generating? Not really anything, because other teams just pack the middle, and the Kings did this last night at 5-on-5 as well. The Leafs just don't really get to the dangerous areas. The difference is, this year, the Leafs are actually good at defending the middle of the ice. The Ducks just didn't, in terms of quality of scoring chances, the Leafs are routinely getting the quality chances. I want to read you another tweet. This is concerning the Kings game last night. So this is from Mike Kelly NHL on Twitter. Shot quality should be on every game summary /scoreboard. Maple Leafs versus Kings. Shots on goal 36-26 in favor of LA. Slot shots 17-9 in favor of Toronto. So it's the same idea. The Leafs really, the main focus is they do not want to allow quality passes through the slot and east-west stuff that force the goaltender to scramble in his crease. They're perfectly content to allow shots from the outside. I talked about this for the Colorado game a few weeks ago, where the Leafs win 2-1. Maybe their goals were a little bit lucky, sure. But defensively, the Avalanche had like 30-some shots, or 38-some shots. Maybe it was 40-something. And everyone was like, wow, Joseph Woll stole that game. And yes, Joseph Woll was excellent in that game. But these shot totals also don't tell the full story, because the Leafs actually got the higher quality chances in that game. So I know it's so easy to look at the shots on goal and look at the time of possession and say that the Leafs are getting outplayed in these games. It's the way that the Leafs are getting quote unquote outplayed is by design. They're giving up bad shots and bad quality chances to their opponent, which inflate the shot totals and inflate their possession numbers, but then the Leafs will get the higher quality chances. So don't concern yourself too much with that. With that being said, we're going to move on from the game recap, and we're going to get into our second period here. As we do, just a reminder to hit like and subscribe to Game Over Toronto as always, and make sure you follow the Game Over Network on social media. Follow all of the Game Over channels on YouTube. We have a Game Over channel for every single Canadian market, and we also have merch over at thegameovernetwork.com. You can check out our merch. It is at thegameovernetwork.com. Once again, we have merch available for every single Canadian market. Shirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, you name it, we got it. Go check that out. Now, I got to catch up on chat first. So, what's new? Least to blow to the lead, blah, blah, blah. They won, so we don't talk about that. And again, that was before the game. Matthew saying, wins are not blowing a lead. Touche, honestly. I mean, they did blow the lead, but they at least made up for it. That's the difference. Famous refs on the Western road trip. So glad they get to be talked about. Yeah, it is what it is. Let's be honest, tonight's performance by the Leafs was horrific. Please explain where Matthews was tonight. Matthews was perfectly fine. I thought last night Marner was a passenger in LA. He was much better tonight. I thought Matthews was perfectly acceptable for what he has been this season. He's not an MVP candidate this season, but he was perfectly fine. I've tried all year for Nicky Bobby, but he is not looking missed right now. Yeah, no, I don't. It's very tough to envision a world where Robertson's in the game one lineup right now, honestly. At Terry, I'm horrific. No, their best. Also, no. That's the correct response, Matthew. Was it horrific? Absolutely not. Any game you win isn't horrific, anyways. But the Leafs controlled the quality of chances. It was not a horrific game, but it also was not their best. That is a completely fair thing to say. Luke in the chat saying, my favorite stat for today is that more than half of Lorentz's goals have been game winners. So what? 4? 4 out of 7? I mean, that is a good stat, though. Like, he has been incredibly clutch for no reason this season. And if we have any hope for the fourth line to be anything, it's going to be hopefully Steven Lorentz banging something away. Refs put their whistles away in the third. Unfortunately, yes, they did. The Leafs are the best NHL team. They usually promote every other team with their close play. Yeah, me in the first half on that one, Matthew. Nia's got 2 minutes for looking scary. Unfortunately, yeah. Leafs win the division and have to play the Sens. No thanks. If you can avoid... hold on. I'd rather play Tampa than the Sens. That's a fascinating conversation point. Because the Leafs have had the Lightning's number. That being said, if you go back to the early 2000s, despite the fact that Ottawa would routinely win the season series, the Leafs had their number in the playoffs. So just keep that in mind. And I don't... Whoever the Leafs play, you're going to have a good... You know that if it's Florida, Tampa... You know you're going to Game 7, so you have however good a chance in Game 7. Woo. No, but the Leafs legitimately, like, they can beat anyone. It's just a matter of whether or not they can put it all together in the playoffs. So I don't think their opponent actually matters that much because we all know that the Leafs beat themselves a lot. And regardless of who they play, they could be playing the Jets, Capitals, Panthers. I don't really care. If the Leafs' best players can put it together and put together a complete series, they have as good a chance as anyone. The problem has been they don't get hot at the same time. If you can avoid stressing yourself before a flight across time zones to face possibly a super pissed Cats, slow play with a win can be understood. I mean, the thing that shouldn't be dismissed out of hand is the flight back after a successful road trip is great for team morale. It is fantastic for team morale. They're going to be flying back to Toronto probably tomorrow or maybe tonight, and they're going to be feeling good about themselves. So you go, you have a day off tomorrow, practice on Tuesday, get ready for that game against the Panthers. If they come out flat against the Panthers and lose, I'm going to be mad. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Carlo versus Brady opening game. I don't know who... I mean, we know Carlo fought last night. That was his first fight in 2 years. We know Brady Tkachuk is going to want to get after it in that series, but I honestly view him the same way you view Matthew Tkachuk in Florida. Even though Brady's bigger and more physically imposing, you just can't give in to the antics. But again, we'll cross that bridge if we get there. The way Tampa is playing right now, I want a Battle of Ontario. Honestly, again, if we're playing off the assumption that the Leafs can beat anyone, bring on Ottawa because it's something new. We've seen Leafs versus Tampa. We've seen Leafs versus Florida. We've seen Leafs versus Boston. We've seen Leafs versus Montreal. It's been like 20 something. It's been, I think, 21 years since we last got a Battle of Ontario in the playoffs. Why not? I know that Ottawa has the Leafs number in the regular season, but Ottawa gets up for those games more than the Leafs do, so I'm not too worried about that. Again, it's playoffs. It's a completely different animal. So, you know what? Give me a new opponent. I know that Ottawa has been a pesky team this regular season, but Tampa is better. Florida is better. So, win the division, secure home ice, and then let the chips fall where they will. All right. So, now that we're caught up, and by the way, thank you to everyone that has been in the chat tonight. Very good conversation so far. Terry M, that's true, but I believe the Leafs will step up against the Bolts and maybe back off against the Sens. I will say, if you are someone who wants goal scoring, cheer for a Tampa series, because a Leafs versus Senators series, there might be 0 5-on-5 goals. But we haven't seen the Berube Leafs play in the playoffs before, so I'm personally anticipating, no matter who they play, that the Leafs are going to play similar to how they did against Boston last year, which is minimal event hockey, but they're at least better equipped to do that this season with the personnel they have on the back end. So it should go better. And if everyone's healthy, we'll see what happens. The only something new I need to see is Leafs versus anyone in the West. Well, Luke, how about we start with the Leafs winning more than one game in the second round? How about let's just get out of the Atlantic hellhole in the second round. Or the first two rounds, rather. Let's worry about that first before we worry about anything else. Do you think Benoit was better? I want to see Myers in, Benoit out before the playoffs. Okay, actually, you know what? We'll make this the second period. The lineup combos. So, we're going to start on the back end because Matthew prompted me. Simone Benoit. Let's pretend that Simone Benoit is better than Philip Myers. Okay? Let's just pretend for a moment. Let's get in the headspace and let's pretend Simone Benoit is a better player than Philip Myers. Nothing that Simone Benoit has done this season and last season has given him the right to be given the sixth defenseman spot out of principle. There is no reason that there shouldn't be a competition. I don't care if Benoit is better than Myers. You have to try both of them and then you play the better one. So I really just despise the notion that the Leafs coaching staff is clearly pushing by not changing the lineup at all, that Benoit is so much better than Myers that there shouldn't even be an opportunity there. Myers needs to, at least, he's gotten an opportunity. I don't know what Myers did to piss off Berube or what Benoit has done to land in his good graces. To me, it really is starting to feel like Pontus Holmberg is Berube's Alex Kerfoot and Simone Benoit is Berube's Justin Hall. The coach's darlings that everyone kind of yells about and complains about, but the coach loves them, so they're always in the lineup. That's what it feels like right now. I want to see Myers because I want to see what OEL can look like on the left. And if it's me and those are two replacement level defensemen, I want OEL on his strong side because I think that will make up the difference. Having three lefties, three righties. But I'm willing to be convinced that Benoit's better. I'm open to that. I'm open to Benoit proving that he is the better option. But you have to give Myers a chance to lose that spot because Benoit has not done enough to solidify his spot in the lineup. Offensively, we just talked about Nick Robertson. It's hard to envision a world where he's in. That being said, it's not. This is the unfortunate reality for Robertson. He is one of the 12 best forwards the Leafs have. However, he is not one of the 9 best. And because of that, he can't be in the lineup. Because he cannot... Did you just compare Benny to Hall? Blasphemy. No. I'm not comparing them in terms of style of play. Because they actually could not be more different. I'm just comparing them in terms of the fact that the coach seems to have a soft spot for this player. I actually agree with you. Thank you, Luke. Appreciate you. So Nick Robertson, he is a skilled third-line scoring winger, which is useful. He has a wicked shot, and that is useful. The problem is, Järnkrok has a good shot as well. He's maybe not as good in transition, but he's bigger, he's better on the forecheck, and he's good defensively. Scott Laughton, you trade a first-round pick for him, you have to have him in your top 9. I don't care if he's at center. I kind of like him on the third line as kind of a grinding winger that's good defensively. So Nick Robertson, he can't be in over those two guys, in my opinion. Maybe Järnkrok, I'd be willing to hear that argument. But the problem is you cannot play Robertson on the fourth line at all. He is better than Pontus Holmberg. He is more talented than David Kampf and Steven Lorentz. But he is not a better fourth liner than any of those guys. So what do? You have two options. You either run the lineup basically as it is right now. This very possibly this could be the game 1 lineup at forward. I have my gripes with loading up the top 6, but this is what Craig Berube has chosen to do. So you better hope that Knies, Matthews, and Marner dominate because they have to. So as a result, where does Robertson fit in? Your other option, if you want Robertson in there, is you run Laughton, Domi, Robertson, Järnkrok, Kampf, Lorentz. That is the other combination. So, would you rather the combination that was being run a week ago, or would you rather the combination we've gotten the last 2 games? I ignore the fact that the Leafs won. I want to see this combination longer because I want to see if this third line can create some chemistry. Do you think Robertson is out of the lineup for good now? I just think it's hard to... I don't know if it's for good. But everyone in the chat right now, you can let me know how you feel. Would you be mad if this was the game 1 forward group? How would you feel if game 1 of the playoffs against whoever the Leafs are playing, this is your forward group? How would you feel? That's what I want to know. Because I think I would be content. Honestly. I'm not happy because Matthews and Marner are together, but I'm content. I think, and I talked about this immediately after the trade deadline, and before actually, because I wanted Robertson to remain in the organization. I think Nick Robertson is your 13th forward, and if there's an injury in the top 9, he's the guy you insert. Let's say Austin Matthews gets hurt. You're screwed. But Max Domi will slide up into the top 6. Laughton will become your third line center, and you can put Robertson on the third line. I think that's what you do. So your decor, honestly, the way that Berube has been deploying the lineup, it feels like this is his playoff lineup. I would switch Lorentz with Laughton and Järnkrok. Ooh, you want Lorentz on the third line? I would probably have a problem with that. I love Steven Lorentz, and he scored a big goal tonight. But he's a fourth liner. He is a prototypical fourth liner. I think you got to stick with him. Robertson will be the first man up is my bet. I'm okay with that. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, Luke. I think Robertson is your Domi, Kampf, and Pontus is a try-hard fourth line. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. I'm going to have to disagree with you there, Matthew. I think because Kampf is going to be useless on that line. The thing is, with Kampf, you have to surround him with checking defensive players or players that are defensively responsible. If you put skilled players with him, like, yeah, he scored a couple goals playing on the second line earlier this year. It's not going to work. So, and I don't think Lorentz with Laughton and Järnkrok is a nothing burger of a line. So I'm going to disagree with you on that. But I think you have to try your best to make a scoring line on the third line. Have Domi with Järnkrok and Laughton, or Laughton and Robertson if you want Järnkrok on line 4. And you just have to, like, if it's Domi Robertson, you are praying to the holiest of deities that you come out even in that matchup. If the lineup is Yarn Crokinlawn, there's a better chance that they don't allow as much. So that's why I lean that way. But you guys can let me know. So that was a very elongated segment on the lineup. But anyways, we're going to switch over to our third segment here. And as always, just a reminder to hit like and subscribe to Game Over Toronto. And if you want to support the Game Over Network in any other way, you can check out our Patreon. The link will be in the description box below. There are both free and paid tiers. If you want to support us financially, we'd really appreciate it. If not, you can join our Discord server as well. Come hang out with a bunch of people in the Game Over Discord server. We have over 100 people in there at this point, so I like 130, I think. So yeah, come hang out with us. Again, the Patreon link is in the description box down below. Now, this third segment, I've talked about this. Goaltending. What do you do? I don't know. Genuinely don't know. Every time one of the Leafs goalies has started to pull away with the who starts game one conversation, someone starts to earn the net, they immediately start playing bad, and then the other guy starts immediately playing well. Now, this weekend was a rarity because both guys actually just played really well. Stolarz didn't face a ton of quality, but he was good against LA. And then Wool was good tonight. I don't think either of the goals were his fault. I think I would give Stolarz the Florida... would I? I think I'd give Stolarz the Florida game. I think you give Stolarz this Florida game and you give Wool the one next week. But we are at a point where there's, 8 games left. It's crunch time. And if the playoffs were starting today, I have no idea who I would start. If I had to pick right now, I think it's dead even. I think I lean Joseph Woll just because we know that he can elevate in the playoffs. Stolarz is an unproven commodity in that regard. Woll, in games 5 and 6 against Boston last year, and in games 4 and 5 against Florida, was it only 4 and 5? No, 3, 4, and 5 against Florida last year, or 2 years ago. My Lord. I think he's done enough in those playoff games to give me confidence. Stolarz, I'm going in like, you were good in the regular season. Hopefully you're good in the playoffs. I don't know. I do worry about Stolarz's rebound control in the playoffs. I also worry about Joseph Woll's puck handling and ability to save shots from distance in the playoffs. Because if there was one, obviously the puck handling is what gives me the most anxiety with Woll, but what Woll's actual biggest weakness is actually, ironically, very similar to the problem in Tampa Bay with Andrei Vasilevskiy. They can't stop shots from distance. And the reason that the Leafs have had Vasilevsky's number in the playoffs is they've gotten so many shots from the point to go in. They create traffic in front. Vasilevskiy isn't the best at seeing around screens and traffic in front, and the Leafs have taken advantage of that. Joseph Woll, shots from distance can beat him if you get traffic in front. Like, he's not the best at fighting through screens. So maybe because Stolarz is so much taller. Actually, yeah. There's 8 of you watching right now. I will pose this question to all of you. Would you rather the guy that has bad rebound control or the guy that sometimes struggles with shots from distance? That is the dilemma. Rebound control, shots from distance. And I think it entirely depends on your opponent. If you're playing Florida or Ottawa, I would lean Woll. If you're playing Tampa, I would lean Stolarz. Because Ottawa is going to muck it up in front of the net. Florida is just Florida. They're insane. Actually, Florida, it's pick your poison because they do both things very well. It's such a tough conversation, man. It is such a tough conversation, and I don't know the answer. I don't have the answer. I'm just here to bring up the conversation points and pose the question to you guys. Those are the 2 options. What would you rather? What would you rather? I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends on who you play. Stolarz is game one starter. Wool is young. He's the goalie of the future. This run, the more experienced Stolarz will be the first. Let's be honest, if they do in the playoffs, then whoever they picked was the obvious choice. If they crash out, then Berube is an idiot because the other guy was the obvious choice. Communication between goalie and defense will be a winning factor. Yes, it will. And this, I will say, if Stolarz is in net, actually whoever's in net, I trust the Leafs defense to help them out the best they can. I kind of want Stolarz, but I'll be okay with Wool too. So I think Luke's point here is important to remember. No matter who they pick, my window is 2 games. Let's say it's Stolarz. And games 1 and 2, he plays, gives up 3 to 4 per game, and the Leafs lose and they're down 2-0. Then you pull it, go to Wool. Same thing if Wool starts games 1 and 2. If the Leafs are down 2-0 in the series, you're going to the other guy. And if one of them is horrific in game 1, like gives up like 5+, then you go to the other guy. But if it's anything like decent to whatever, whoever starts game 1 should start game 2. And then we can have the conversation after game 2 if you want to switch. I'd rather have Stolarz in net than Wool. There you go. And honestly, I think this conversation is entirely dependent on what you think of these 2 goalies, or what you thought of these 2 goalies like halfway through the season. I don't think anything that has happened in 2025 overall is really going to sway anyone to change their opinions, because both goalies have had their hot stretches. They've both had their cold stretches. They've had good games, bad games, everywhere in between. They've both been good all season. And honestly, if we're being honest, this is a fantastic problem to have. You have 2 good goalies, so you should feel comfortable with either guy in net. There's a reason that the Leafs have been shockingly good on the second half of back-to-backs this year, because no matter who's starting, you have a goalie that can give you a chance to win. So for as much as this debate, who starts game 1, is fascinating, and I'm curious to see what happens down the stretch in these last 8 games. Going into game 1, regardless of my preference, I am comfortable with both of these guys starting a playoff game. And if it's game 7 too, like if it's game 7 tomorrow, who's starting? I don't care, because both of them give you a chance to win. And that, at the end of the day, is all that matters. I'm going to flip us over to our final segment now. This is the part of the show where this is the part of the show where we're supposed to have the question segment, but this whole show has basically been a question segment, which, by the way, thank you guys so much for being so active in the chat and having these conversations with me. It's been a ton of fun. So if you have any further comments on the goaltending situation, I'd love to hear them. And if not, if you have any other questions in general, I would love to hear them as well. Leafs questions, playoff questions, Atlantic Division race questions, whatever it may be, any hockey question you can throw at me. This is the time. And as always, a reminder to hit like and subscribe to Game Over Toronto. Real quick, as I wait for your guys' questions, I want to give a shout out to a player. I don't do this usually. I don't ever just in the middle of the show say, I want to give a shout out to a player who impressed me on the ice and has been really good all season. Because, and this is so weird because it's actually not a Leaf. I want to take a second and shout out Anaheim Ducks defenseman Jackson Lacombe. Some of you have probably never heard that name before, but I want to tell you, Jackson Lacombe is the most underrated player in the entire National Hockey League. This guy has had an unreal season. His underlying numbers have been absolutely fantastic, but for those of you who don't really care about the advanced stats, here's my pitch to you. Tonight, the most noticeable player on the ice on either team was Lacombe. He was getting his stick on absolutely everything. He was super frustrating to play against. He's great at defending the rush. He's great at breaking up plays in transition and at stealing the puck from opposing forwards. And he's actually really good offensively too. He runs the Ducks power play. He has over 40 points this season. I want to give a shout out to Jackson Lacombe for being a fantastic defenseman that deserves a lot more love. He's only like 24 years old. The Ducks got a good one with that guy. Shout out to him. Do you think Calgary and Vancouver can make the playoffs? Can? Yes. Will they? Well, First of all, they both can't make it. It's one or the other if either makes it. Let's look at the standings right now. The St. Louis Blues have kind of ruined this wildcard race because they went on an unbelievable heater. They've won. Oh, they won again, dude. What on earth? The Blues have won 9 in a row. So currently, Vancouver sits 6 points back with only a game in hand. The Flames are 7 points back with 3 games in hand. The Flames probably have to win all of those games, but they've lost 2 in a row. Do they play the Blues? They do not play the Blues. Do the Canucks play the Blues? They do not play the Blues. Both teams have a lot of Pacific rivals down the stretch. So I think the ship is starting to sail on that. I was really hopeful that we were going to get 6 out of 7 Canadian teams. I don't think it's going to happen. We honestly might get, we might only get 4. Winnipeg, Toronto, Edmonton, and Ottawa. Montreal is fighting for their lives right now. I kind of hope they get in. As much as I hate them, they are at least fun to watch. And that series against the Caps would be entertaining. We could get 4 Canadian teams. We could get up to 6. I don't think Calgary or Vancouver are going to do it, though. Just a note to say it isn't impossible for the difference between first and third in the East to come down to regulation wins or even whatever the tiebreaker after that is. I believe the Leafs are now tied with Tampa or maybe one ahead for regulation wins and 3 or so points up. So yes, I talked about this at the start of the show. I will remind you again. The Leafs are currently 3 points up on both the Panthers and the Lightning. Both of those teams have a game in hand. The primary tiebreaker, I believe, is just wins in general. And then if it's the same amount of wins, it's regulation wins. And then the next tiebreaker is regulation plus overtime. So that's why the shootout is so annoying. The Leafs have only been to 3 shootouts this season. They're 1-2 in those. But the shootout wins are technically worth less than regulation wins and regulation and overtime wins. So currently, I'll give a quick recap on that too. So currently, Toronto and Tampa Bay are tied with 37 regulation wins. The Leafs, however, have 44 regulation / overtime wins. Tampa Bay only has 41. Okay? So Tampa Bay has 2 less wins in general, and they also have an extra win coming in the shootout. So Toronto does have the tiebreaker over Tampa Bay. If Tampa Bay wins in overtime. If Tampa Bay wins in regulation, I believe they have the tiebreaker. But then hold on, let me confirm. So yeah, it's regulation wins. So Tampa Bay, if they win in regulation, they'd have the tiebreaker. If they win in overtime, the Leafs have the tiebreaker. But regardless, neither Florida or Tampa can catch them right now. Anyways, sorry, the Atlantic, not just these. Yeah, no one's catching Washington. The interesting thing, though, is if you can have more points than Carolina, just in case Washington bows out, which I might bet on. But then you can have if you're second in the East, then you have home ice advantage. If Washington loses, you would have home ice advantage throughout the playoffs, so that'd be good. But yeah, the Atlantic race has been crazy, man. This has been so fun to watch. And just an update on the Eastern standings. So yeah, the Leafs are technically third. Carolina has a game in hand. Same amount of wins, but same amount of points. And then Tampa and Florida right there, man. So exciting. Holy crap. This is insane. This is such a good race. Do you think Wednesday's game against the Panthers will look at the playoffs when it means a lot and the Panthers should be tired? Will be a look at the playoffs. Sorry, I read that wrong. Will be a look at the playoffs when it means a lot and the Panthers should be tired? No. Respectfully, it's not that this game doesn't mean anything. You can't replicate playoff hockey in the regular season. You just can't. For as much as I wish you could, this will be these 2 games against the Panthers and the game against Tampa will be as close to playoff hockey as you'll get in the regular season. It's not the same. It's just not the same. And also in the playoffs, the teams will be on level playing fields. Like, you're playing every other night against the same team, so being tired is not an excuse. This is a game that the Leafs have to take advantage of, though. There is no excuse to lose on Wednesday. And you know what? To go further, the Florida Panthers have been incredibly mid for the last 2 months. Do you guys know when the Panthers' last regulation win was? It was against Toronto. They have not won in regulation since beating the Leafs on March 13th. It's almost April. So, do with that information what you will. The Panthers are not as big and scary as we portray them to be. They're a very good team. Beatable. They are beatable. And the Leafs need to beat them on Wednesday. Need. If you beat them on Wednesday, let's pretend the Panthers beat Montreal on Tuesday, because I don't expect Montreal to win both of those games. So let's say Florida beats Montreal in regulation on Tuesday. If the Leafs win on Wednesday, in the same amount of games played, they will have a 3-point lead on the Panthers. So they're due, damn. Yeah, you know what? They can get their regulation win against Montreal on Tuesday. So yeah. With that being said, everyone, I think that is where we are going to wrap the show. So if you have any last second questions, this is the time to get them in quickly. If not, then thank you everyone for joining me in the chat. It's been a true pleasure to spend this evening with you following a Leafs win over the Anaheim Ducks. My name is Zach Payne. You can find me on Twitter and Bluesky at ZachPayne41. Make sure you subscribe to the Game Over Toronto channel. Follow the Game Over Network on Twitter, Bluesky, and Instagram as well. Thank you so much, everyone, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.